The Spector, Part 8, The Revelation. Kids, what you have here is an anomaly, Dr. Lyle said. What do you mean? Adam replied. I will tell you, but first we need to talk about how you four came to know about this, she said and looked across the table at all of us. Well, I cleared my throat. Several years ago, my grandmother on the East Coast passed away, and when we were cleaning out her personal effects, my brother found a lockbox. We had it shipped to our house in Downey. About 2.5 years ago, when we were having a garage sale, he managed to get the box opened, and this was inside. He tried to study it, but unfortunately, he also passed away. Jen took my hand. These murders, Dr. Lyle said. When did they start and how many have happened? Well, they started this week. Haven't you seen the news? Johnny said. I'm teaching full time, and when I'm not, I'm lesson planning or doing my research project, Dr. Lyle said. Now, how many have gone missing or have been found dead? I'm not sure exactly. Maybe 10, 11 people, Adam said. We nodded our heads in agreement. Well, it's good that you came to me when you did, Dr. Lyle said. You see, kids, what you have here, this book, can be linked to several different historical events dating back to ancient times. It's said that this book was responsible for things like the Black Plague, the disappearance at Roanoke, the witch trials. This book, it's both the disease and can be the cure. May I see the book, miss? She reached out her hand towards Jen, and Jen handed her the book. They said the origins of this book are unknown. Some speculate that it came from the Devil's Library. Its contents are not to be taken lightly. Tell me, have you kids read the book? A little, I said to Dr. Lyle. My brother, Shane, Shane? She said. Shane Stone? She added. Yes. How on earth did you know that? I replied. Shane was your brother? She asked. Yes, ma'am. He had these notes in, like, translations, and that poor boy, she said. I'm guessing that's where you got my number and found me. Yes, ma'am. Did you know him? I asked. Shane came to me a little over 2 years ago, sometime in September of '96. He said that, gosh, you'll have to excuse me, it's been a while. He said that something had been following him, and I had asked that he bring me the book, but that was the last I heard from him. God rest his soul. Dr. Lyle, what is this thing? What was following him? What did we all see that... Wait, you saw it? All of you saw it? We all nodded our heads yes. Kids, if you saw it, then it is strong. It's hunting. It's preparing. These 10 to 11 people, those were just the start. If you saw it, then you four are the only four who could stop it. Who saw it first? I raised my hand. She looked at me and flipped open the book, turning its pages until she stopped on one. Are you Marcus Stone? She asked. Yes, ma'am, I replied. Wait, Mark, your name is in that thing? Adam said. Since when? What the hell, Mark? Johnny said with an angered tone. I was going to tell you guys, but it all happened so fast, I said. Mark, Dr. Lyle, what does this mean? It means he is the only one who can stop it, Dr. Lyle said. Marcus, what exactly did you see? She added. It was this tall, black thing with these piercingly red eyes. Without missing a beat, she started flipping pages. She flipped through them fast, unlike before when she did gently. Spector Mortorium, the specter of the dead, she said. The specter is a supernatural being. It hides in the shadow and hunts. It hunts and drains civilizations. It feeds on the blood of the living and is the destroyer of lands and worlds. It said that unless he stopped, he will not stop until every living creature has vanished. The feeling in the room shifted, and a dark cloud had taken over. Mark, you're the only one on this planet that can stop it. Me? I added. How is that possible? I said, puzzled. It showed itself to you because it fears you. It knows you can stop it, but it wants to try to scare you away, drive you mad. It will do everything it can to stop you. When was the last time you saw it? Dr. Lyle asked. Last night, I said. Last night? Jen said. Mark, why didn't you say anything? I don't know, I said. Jen got up and walked to the door. She shook the knob. Dr. Lyle, will you unlock this, please? Dr. Lyle set the book down and went to her purse. Jen, I said. Jen, please wait. No, Mark. You go through something like that and you don't tell us? No, just leave me alone. Dr. Lyle unlocked the door and Jen left. I walked out behind her. Jen, please stop, I said. She made it to the elevator with students getting off and the doors shut before I could get there. I stood there for a second, waiting on the next elevator, when I felt a hand on my shoulder. Take it from me, dear. She just needs a minute, Dr. Lyle said to me. Let's go back to the classroom. We both turned and walked back to the classroom and joined Johnny and Adam at the table. So, what do we need to do to stop it, Dr. Lyle? Adam said. It isn't specific. Hold on a minute. Dr. Lyle started flipping through the pages, searching for answers. I looked at the door, concerned about Jen. Maybe I should have told her about my name in the book. Maybe I should have said something to her. I think I found it, Dr. Lyle said. It says here that in order to... Oh, she stopped. What does it say? Johnny asked. It says there are two pieces. The first is some sort of ritual. The second is the damned must sacrifice themselves. The room went silent. Sacrifice meaning death? I said quietly. Dr. Lyle looked at me and nodded her head. Yes, she said. The world froze for me. My senses dulled, and everything in the room went monotone. I felt like I was in a trance. I could hear my heartbeat and the blood rushing through my veins at 1,000 miles per hour. Adam snapped his hand in front of my face. Snap! And I was back in the room. What's the ritual? I asked. No, Mark, there has to be another way, Johnny said. Dr. Lyle, is there anything else in there that could do anything? I mean, Mark's grandmother is on there and she lived, right? Adam said. Right, she lived to be old, Johnny added. I'm not sure. Maybe she died and was brought back, or maybe someone else sacrificed themselves or something, Dr. Lyle said. They all looked at me. What's the ritual, Doctor? Mark, Adam said. No, I shouted. No. These people's blood is on my hands if I don't do something, and just after Shane died, just let me do this. Johnny's eyes started to well up. Mark, he said. He then got up and left the room, letting the door slam behind him as he made his way out of the door. Adam remained. Dr. Lyle went on to explain the ritual to us, explaining that we will need to gather by a fire and sacrifice one personal item each, throwing it into the fire. She then explained the chant that we'll have to make, and the ending, which is the part where I must let my blood touch the fire, and when my soul leaves my body, the Spector will be no more. We thanked Dr. Lyle for her time and left the building. Jen and Johnny were nowhere to be found, so Adam and I started walking back towards the car. Mark, Adam said, do you remember that science project that we had back in middle school? He asked. Yeah, I do, I replied. Do you remember what you said to me when we had to dissect that pig's heart or whatever it was? Adam, you got this. Just take it one step at a time, and it'll all work out, I replied. You know, I never said thank you for that. You may not have known, but at the time, my world was sort of falling apart. My dad was caught cheating, and, well, let's just say things were ugly. I felt like nobody saw me, and I felt alone, and for some reason, that just stuck with me. I I don't want to sound lame. Nah, man, you're fine. You don't need to thank me. I'm glad that it's helped, I said to him. Mark, I want you to know that I am sorry about what Derek said, and I know I could have been nicer to you at times, and if you really are going through with this, I wanted you to know that you're a great dude, and I wish I wouldn't have followed the crowd so much because I think we could have been great friends, Adam said. Hey man, I'm not dead yet, I replied, cracked a smile. Adam smiled and tapped his hand on my shoulder. We continued to the car, and when we got in, Jen and Johnny were already inside. We cracked the door open and sat in the back seat. Hey Jen, save it, Mark, she said sternly. She shifted the car into reverse, backed out of the spot, and pulled away. Johnny flipped the radio on. Another head hangs lowly, child is slowly taken. And the violence caused such silence. Who are we mistaken? But you see, it's not me. It's not my family. And your head, they are fighting. The ride home was silent. I had no idea if Johnny had told Jen what's at stake or if Jen knew. We dropped Johnny back off at his house and Adam back at school. Mark, thanks, man. I'll see you guys tomorrow, Adam said as he exited the vehicle. We watched Adam get into his car and take off. Jen and I sat there for a second before she shifted the car into drive, except this time, she didn't head towards our neighborhood. She turned out of the parking lot the opposite direction. Jen, I said, but she didn't reply. We made our way through the neighborhoods and down the streets until finally she pulled into the parking lot of the public pool. The parking lot was pretty large and it was sort of private. It had this large wooden fence around it. She pulled up to a parking spot and stopped. She shut the car off. She got out of the car and walked about 10 feet before stopping. I got out of the car and walked behind her. When I got to Jen, I walked in front of her and just looked at her. Tears slowly rolled down her face. Jen, I said to her, and she looked up at me, then looked away. So, are you going to? She said. Going to what? I replied. Don't act fucking stupid, Mark. Are you going to do it? The ritual. Are you going to hurt yourself? Are you going to take your life for this shitty town? Are you? She pushed me once, then kept pushing me, tears streaming down her face. Are you going to hurt yourself, you fucker? Are you? She continued to shout at me. I felt my eyes well up and tears began to form. Seeing this, Jen slapped me. I turned around and held my cheek, which throbbed. I turned around to Jen again. Before I could say a word, she wrapped her arms around me, tightly, like a snake coiling up its prey. We could just run away, Mark. Do you hear me, Marky? We could just get in the car and leave it all behind. Come on, Mark. We can just go, you and me. We could just... She became distraught now. Jen, I said, stuttering with tears. Those big brown eyes made their way off my shoulder and locked with mine. We stared at each other for a minute. Please don't leave me, she said. I felt a stab in my heart as it sunk to my feet. I don't want to. I want to leave. I want to go anywhere with you, but I can't. What about Holly? My mom, my dad? What if that thing kills one of them? I don't want to do this, but I have to. I don't have a choice. Her face dropped, then looked back at mine. Mark, she said. We locked eyes again. I know, Jen. I leaned in, and she did as well. Our foreheads touched, and we looked deep into each other's eyes. I started to lean in further, but moved my head to her shoulder, embracing her. "Mark," she said in my ear, my eyes closed. "Yeah," I said back. I felt her head move up and heard her shout, "Mark!" My eyes popped open, and I turned around, my hands still wrapped around her waist. We looked, and standing in front of us was him. Its red eyes glowed against its black figure as it looked menacingly at us. "I warned you about fucking with me," it shouted at us. Jen, becoming distraught, buried herself into my arms. "What do you want, you sick fuck?" I shouted at it. "I warned you, bitch boy. I warned you about messing with me. Now you're going to pay," it said, now grinning in amusement. "I'm going to fucking kill you. You hear me?" I shouted back. "Stupid child. I am eternal. You can't stop me. I will feed on your flesh soon enough. But I warned you about fucking with me, and you didn't listen. Then I warned you again, and again, you didn't listen. You don't listen to me, and I warned you about not listening to me. Maybe now you'll listen," it said. Suddenly, I heard a voice. "Mark, it's got me. Mark!" I recognized this voice. A chill went down my spine and rushed through my body. It disappeared. I looked at Jen. "Get in the car, now!" I let her go and ran to the driver's seat, jumping in and slamming the door. Jen got in the passenger seat. I peeled out of the parking lot, not stopping at any signs, weaving my way through traffic, going well over the speed limit. "Mark, slow down," Jen said. I wasn't listening. I turned down Travis Street, going 70 miles per hour. Jen screamed as the car began to fishtail after the turn. I heard horns blaring and, suddenly, a siren behind me. Not now, I thought to myself. I had no time to waste. I turned on the Blaine and... oh God. Oh no. This can't be happening. There were several police officers outside my house, along with a fire truck and an ambulance. I slowed down, pulled up to the curb, and hopped out. I pushed my neighbors out of the way, running towards the front door. I felt arms reach out and grab me. "Stop, son," a voice said. It was Chief Slater, as he held me back. He wrapped his arms around me as I was trying to break his clutches. Then I saw my dad. "Mark," he called out. He walked up to me while Chief Slater held me back. "Dad, what's going on?" I said, tears rolling down my face. He walked up to me and put his hands on my shoulders. "Calm down, son," he said to me. "What the fuck is going on, Dad?" I shouted back, spit coming out of my mouth as I yelled. Jen ran up to us. "Mark, stop," she said as she wrapped her arms around me. Tears falling down my face, Chief Slater loosened his grip. "Dad," I said, fumbling over my words. Tell me, Dad," I said again and again. My dad, tears in his eyes, looked at Jen and me. "It's Holly," he said with a tremble in his voice. "She's gone." It felt like all the air in my lungs was sucked out of me, like a bullet hitting me right in the chest. What do you mean she's gone?" I said to my dad. He just stared. "Dad!" I shouted at him, but he didn't respond. I don't know if it was fear or heartbreak or if he just didn't have the gall to tell me. "Come with me, son," Chief Slater said, pulling me aside. Jen, still holding on to me at this point, loosened her grip, but turned and walked with Chief Slater and I. He walked us over to the back side of his police car, which was parked furthest away from everything. "Mark, I will tell you what we found, but you have to try to stay calm and level-headed," he said to me. "Chief, my sister is dead. How am I—" "She isn't dead," he interjected. "What do you mean she isn't dead? My dad just said she's—" "Mark," he stopped me again. He wasn't able to finish his sentence. "Holly is still alive, physically, but she's gone into a coma." I tried to say back, but my chest was tight. and I felt my vision start to blur. Mark, sit down, hun, Jen said, as she slowly but gently pulled me down to the ground with her arms resting over my shoulder. We both slowly got down and sat on the ground behind Chief Slater's police cruiser. He got down on the one knee, making a slight grunt as he did so. Chief, what happened? I asked. I'm not sure, son. It's hard to explain. From what I understand, your parents came home from work and found her in your brother's old room, tearing things off the walls, and when they confronted her about what she was doing, she started shouting at them, saying these things that didn't really make sense. The next thing you know, she collapsed to the floor. It's like if someone or something knocked her out. Physically, she's fine. Her heart rate was a little high and her respiratory seemed fine, but for lack of a better way to put it, the lights are on, but nobody's home. Another ambulance took her to St. Elm's Hospital, and that's where she is now. They'll take good care of her there. I'm sorry you had to come home to this, Chief Slater said. He patted my shoulder, stood up, then walked away. Mark, Jen said, and I looked at her, tears rolling down her face as well. She didn't say another word, just rested her head on my shoulders. About half an hour went by, and the ambulance, along with the police officers, all left in an orderly fashion. My parents left behind them, going to the hospital to be with Holly. I couldn't bear to see her like that. Jen stuck around. I guess she didn't want me to be alone with all of this happening. We sat outside, sitting on my porch, until the light began to fade away and the darkness of night fell, at which point we made our way inside. We went to the living room and just sat there for a while until a familiar noise broke the silence. Our phone started to ring. I stood up, leaving Jen in the living room. I walked over to the kitchen, picked up the phone, and said, "Hello?" "Hey, Mark," a voice said back. It was my mother. "We're going to stay up here tonight. If you need anything, call the hospital and give them extension 1358. "Okay, Mom," I said back. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" she asked. "I'll be okay. Please keep me updated," I said back. "We will. And Mark, please be careful. I love you." "I love you too, Mom," I replied and hung up the phone. I turned around, starting to feel tears fill in my eyes. I sucked them up and started making my way back to the living room. When I got there, Jim was curled up on the couch in a blanket that she must have pulled out of the chest and that's in the corner. Her eyes were droopy as she watched the TV. "It's getting pretty late and I'm getting pretty tired. You should probably head home and get some sleep," I said to her. "And leave you alone with that thing lurking about and by yourself? I don't think so," she said back. "So, what? Do you want to stay the night?" I replied. "If that's okay with you," she said back. She stood up and walked over to me. She reached out and placed her hands on my cheeks and looked into my eyes. "I'm not letting that thing hurt you," she said to me. "Did Johnny tell you what the ritual is?" I asked. She sighed and looked away. "Yes," she said quietly. "But Mark, I'm not going to let you do that. There has to be another way. We'll study the book some more. Maybe Dr. Lyle missed something," she said. "Maybe." I looked away. "I need to get a change of clothes. Come with me to my house." I nodded my head and we made our way out the door, down the street and over to Jen's house. She clicked the numbers into the keypad still fastened to the door, and the key dropped out. "So are you guys actually going to move in fully?" I said jokingly. "Eventually. I don't know what's going on," she said back. We made our way through the maze of boxes, up the stairs, and into her room. She picked out a pair of plaid pajama pants and a red t-shirt that was probably a size too big for her. We made our way downstairs and out the front door. She locked it behind her. We made our way down the block, passing the Johnston's house. We stopped and looked over. It was about 9:30 now, so the street was quiet. No cars passing, just the glow of street lamps in the damp night. We both just stared. As we stood there, A feeling of guilt rushed over me, like somehow this was my fault. I reached over and grabbed Jen's hand. I turned my head towards her, and she turned hers towards mine. We both just looked at each other like we knew what each other felt in that moment. We have to find a way to fix this. For the Johnstons, for the other families, and for Holly. She nodded her head, and we continued back into my house. When we got there, I went into my room and changed into a pair of basketball shorts and a t-shirt, while Jen went to the bathroom and changed into her pajamas. I laid on my bed and just stared at the ceiling. A few minutes later, Jen came into my room. "Mark," she said softly. "Yeah," I replied. "I hope it's okay, but..." She stopped, walked over, lifted up the blanket and crawled into my bed with me, wrapping her arms around my chest and putting her head onto my shoulders. "I just don't want to be alone," she said. "Me either." My bedside lamp was the only thing on, as I had turned off the overhead light. I clicked the lamp off, and when I did, I felt Jen's head lift off of my shoulders. Her hair slowly brushed against my face, and her lips pressed against my cheek for a moment, then broke off. "Good night," she whispered to me. "Good night," I said back. We lay there together until slowly but surely we both drifted off to sleep.